Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tavern Adjacent. We're back on the solo set. Feels good to be here. We had a few guests this month. We had Michelle Young Bradley, we had Puffin Forrest, Dingo Doodles. We got more people coming up, I'm sure, to fill in the guest roles on this podcast. We love having people on the show, but it's good to be back on a solo episode because sometimes I just want to talk to you guys, one on a few thousand, But today, we've got some good topics. Today, we're going to be talking about the worst sessions I've run recently. We're wrapping up my 2-year Descent into the Veil campaign, and while it was phenomenal, everyone's got off days. Sometimes you run a session that's less good than the others, and I'm going to talk about that. And then we're going to be talking about paid Dungeons and Dragons. Paid games have been coming up a lot. I just saw a J&D sponsorship for Start Playing, and I just saw Start Playing Horror Story like literally an hour later. So we're going to be talking about paid D&D. We're going to be talking about red flags and things to look out for. If you want to do paid D&D, I think that's cool, but I also think that you should value your money and value your time. So I'm going to be showing you words are hard. I'm going to be showing you some things to look out for, and then finally we'll end it off with Homebrew Corner, where we'll talk about Tavern Tales, my system, my D&D 5e rewrite. I'm finishing up the backgrounds, and we're going to talk about some lore stuff. It's going to be fun. So without further ado, guys, we got a lot of topics. Let's get started. All right, so topic number 1 on the docket, we have the worst sessions of D&D I have run in the past couple years. Now, Campaign 2, Descent into the Veil, is my second full homebrew campaign with my primary home game party. It's not like live streamed or anything, so don't ask. I won't live stream this basically ever. Though there is a part of me, there's a small part of me, and I've been like broaching this idea to my party. I might record the final battle. There won't be any context to it, but I want to show you guys like how I run a big campaign ending battle, because the last time I did it, it was really awesome, and who knows, who knows, maybe this time it'll be really awesome too. I might not do that, it depends on like how the game itself goes and like how I feel in that moment, but if I'm feeling good and I want to do it, hell, I might, because I think that my style combined with Matt Colville's action-oriented monster design, so many syllables there, I think that it can make for a really good final battle. So who knows, maybe I'll record that. But, even though I think that the vast majority of this campaign has been absolutely incredible, an experience I am absolutely never going to forget, there were some times where I, as a dungeon master, did not do due diligence and resulted in sessions that were less good than others. And I did this, like, at the beginning of this channel's run, before the vast majority of you got here. I don't even know if I had 1,000 subscribers at that point, but I was wrapping up my first D&D campaign, my first full homebrew D&D campaign, which was, I think, 1.5 years at that point. And when I wrapped it up, I did a look back on the 2 worst sessions of that campaign that I had run. So now that we're here at the end of my second campaign, like 40,000 subscribers later, I figured, hey, let's do it again. Let's check out the worst sessions of Descent into the Veil. I think that the amount of bad sessions in this campaign is significantly less than the first campaign. Just at a first point, because I'm a better DM now. If you practice DMing a lot, you're going to get better at it. I know, shocker. When you practice a skill a ton and you dedicate a lot of your life to it, you're going to get better at that skill. I know, I am bringing new revelations to the table. But seriously, it's felt good to look back on the notes from Campaign 1 and from early Descent into the Veil sessions, early sessions of Campaign 2, and see how I've improved. One thing that I think has contributed to my improvement big time, though, is my notes. My notes have gotten so much cleaner, and there's more of them. This, I think, primarily stemmed from my actual plays. When I was doing actual plays, Shadow over Kirkonos, stuff like that, when I was doing that, I took way more notes because I was like, okay, we're recording this, I'm doing this with YouTubers, I want to take this more seriously. And I started transferring that effort into my home game. to the point where I felt like, okay, now my note taking is way, way better. I was taking very minimalist notes, which I understand that might be some people's styles. A lot of you guys will take very few notes, and I think that that's cool if that's your style. However, it turned out that wasn't my style. Having more notes helped me exponentially to improve sessions, not necessarily because I'd read them. Like, I wouldn't read my notes through my sessions. I very rarely actually, take a look at my notes unless there's some kind of stat block I need to look at or a line of dialogue or a monologue that I need to get started. Sometimes I'll write down individual lines just to kickstart a monologue because I can't start improvising until I have something to hook onto. And sometimes I'll have a line to add to that hook, So that is a situation where I would read off my notes. But other than that, I'm mostly just doing it off the top of my head because when I write things down, it's much easier for me to remember. It's just how my brain works. So taking notes has helped me so much. Also, putting stat blocks in your notes. I do not know how I went for years without doing this. This is something that Matt Colville talked about in his in his prepping sessions can be fun video, which is a great video, by the way. And it was also really awesome because when Matt Colville was talking about his style of prepping sessions and how he likes prepping games, it's very similar to the way I already prepped games. And I was like, oh my God, I prep games like Matt Colville. Holy crap. It was a very narcissistic moment for me, but it felt good. So let me have this, all right? He even takes inspiration from the same map designers that I love so much, Shay and Peiku, who are, it's not surprising. Shay and Peiku, if you haven't heard of them, they're our cartography duo who are the quintessential map makers of Dungeons and Dragons. In my opinion, no one beats them. They are the creme de la crop. And even though you're paying kind of a premium for them, if you want all the variants of their maps, I think it's $10, $20 a month, I think. $10 per map, and they release 2 maps a month. So yeah, $20 a month. I mean, it's a premium, but it's worth it, dude. They make some excellent maps. But in any case, back to the actual point. I don't know how the hell I went so long without putting stat blocks in your notes. Do this. Even if you're a minimalist notes guy, just having all the stat blocks on a Google sheet so I could look through them easily, so useful. One of the best things I ever did. Because a big reason why so many of my early combats were so slow, and we're going to get into the worst sessions soon, but overall, early combats in Campaign 2 and throughout Campaign 1, a big reason why they were so slow is because I had to go through all these tabs because I used to have all my stat blocks in a Google Drive, and I still do. I use a Google Drive to organize them, but I would keep them in there. I wouldn't put them in a dedicated spot for the session, and that resulted, sorry, I touched the microphone if it made a nasty noise, my bad. That resulted in me having to sift through all of these tabs to find the stat blocks, and it made me so much more stressed out, and that reverberates throughout the entirety of the combat. It's not just on my turns where I'm being slow. I'm reacting slowly to literally everything else happening in the combat because I just don't understand what's happening on my entire end. Remember, as a dungeon master, you're not just handling your turn like a player character, you're handling half the combat as all of the adversaries, right? So if you're slow, it's going to reverberate throughout the experience for everyone at the table, And I'm not trying to say that to put a lot of pressure on you, but it is the truth. When you're the dungeon master, that's the role you take. So just having the stat blocks all neatly consolidated on a Google Doc helped me to speed up combat and to keep it, expedited so much. It helped me so much. I think that that's a big thing. But yeah, what are the sessions I thought were particularly rough? Spoiler alert, they all have to do with combat, and they were all pre-Flea Mortals, which is a big reason why I'm promoting that book so often, is because I think that this helped me to run so many phenomenal sessions so consistently, because combat was basically effortless. Running great combat is effortless with Flea Mortals, but pre-Flea Mortals, not so much. I think the worst session of Campaign 2, to my knowledge, there were a lot of good ones. The vast majority of them were good ones. But I think the worst session was a session midway through the campaign. The party had just beaten a major foe of theirs, the Angel of Engelfall, a vampire who was corrupted and possessed by Vecna. They went into her brain, literally cut Vecna out of her brain, and returned her to her original form, purified the vampirism. It was a great little moment, and I decided to have a celebration session afterwards, a little celebration session where they would hang out with their allies, drink, revel, and then at the end there would be a bar fight where it turns out some of their allies were actually replaced by some slimes, and it turns out the tavern that they were celebrating was a giant mimic. It's a fun twist, The tavern mimic idea I thought was cool. I saw a map for it online, and I was like, okay, I've got to use that. And then we could have some of the employees and some of their friends be actually secret, slime mimic things that replace their buddies, got body swapped, or maybe their friends come in late to the party, but the party, not the party like the celebration, but the group, the party would be like, oh, wait, you're already here. What happened? And then it turns out that the people who are already there, oh, no, they're mimics. Fun fight. It's a cool concept, but it's mostly just the concept. I didn't actually have an idea for how that would work in a mechanical sense. You can kind of tell that I'm rambling on and on about how this would work in my head, but in terms of how it would actually function at the table, I didn't take the effort to think that through. I just thought, oh, Mimic Tavern, that's a fun idea. Let's throw it in there. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of my sessions are rocky, is I start with a cool concept, but I get cocky. And I don't put any effort into making it cool in a mechanical sense. I just have confidence that I can wing it and make it actually work without actually thinking about it, which is bad. You can't do that. You actually need to put, at least in my games, I need to put effort into making it work in a mechanical sense. And in this fight, I absolutely was not doing that. It was boring. It was a slog. I mean, it opened up with a fun twist, like, oh my god, we're in a Mimic Tavern, and then the monk just gets one-shotted by one of the slime creatures, and okay, that's threatening, but is it really? I mean, this is supposed to be, you have to adapt to the tone of the fight. Remember, this is coming off the back of a party, a celebration. This is more of a comedy moment. We're in a Mimic Tavern. It's not really like, oh, we're fighting Vecna or we're fighting a red dragon where tensions are high, the party expect to be going down. This is more of like a downtime session, and I open it up by one-shotting a player character. I mean, he's not dead, he's rolling death saves, but at the same time, I should measure time and place, and I should have balanced the damage around this. I've had downtime combats that are made to be a throwaway, that are made to be easy, Instead of the monsters doing tons of damage, they inflict fun status effects, like making the party grow gills, or forcing the bard to lose his hands temporarily, or a monster that cuts off your head but keeps you alive in a weird spiritual magic way. It's a thing in Flea Mortals, it's really fun. But these are status conditions that don't actually threaten your life. I mean, if the party are being really, really stupid, not taking it seriously at all, they're going to be at serious risk. But in actuality, this isn't meant to be a super challenging fight. Not every fight needs to be challenging. But by opening this combat up with an instant knock, I mean, I just kind of killed the entire vibe. The party needs to awkwardly transition into, okay, we need to take this seriously mode. But at the end of the day, other than just dealing damage and sometimes absorbing player characters, the slime creatures that I use for these fights, they weren't very interesting, All they could do was really just attack the players and do damage, and sometimes grapple them and absorb them in to deal a little bit more damage, but that's it. They had a healing mechanic, but I mean, really, that healing mechanic only served to make the fight longer, not make it more engaging. That's also something that you need to worry about with healing mechanics. It's probably something that I'm never going to put in my games again. Healing mechanics are dumb, at least in my experience. They just make fights take way longer. They can be a slog. It doesn't encourage your party to engage. It just makes them go, now they have more health. Great. Not fun, right? Not fun for them. Not fun for me, at least as a dungeon master. I think that was my worst session because I was so focused on the concept that I wasn't thinking about the mechanics, and that resulted in a combat that was lazy. It really didn't help that in that same session, I was at my friend's place. We were running an in-person game that time, and I had my laptop out, it was plugged in, and my friend's dog ran over, pulled the wire, and knocked my laptop onto the ground. That was a moment. And from then on, my cable was broken, my laptop was almost broken, my laptop was almost out of battery because it really needed the charge, and from then on I was cranky, I was also cranky. That's another big factor. Not only was the combat not well designed by me, but I was also cranky because this dog just knocked over my computer. Not cool, dog. Not the dog's fault, obviously. I shouldn't have put it there in the first place. But, that is another thing that you need to work. Words are hard. It's another thing you need to watch out for. Sometimes, maybe a lot of times, your real life circumstances will affect the way you play the game. Here's a great example of that. Right now, I'm really tired. I just woke up and I'm recording this episode. So my words are not as clear. There you go. Real life effects having an effect on things you don't really expect them to. Sleep in podcast and crankiness in D&D. When you're cranky, you're not going to run D&D as well as you would if you're in a good mood. That's just, it seems obvious, but sometimes it kind of just goes over your head. Sometimes you think like, okay, I can just push aside this crap and keep on running the game. But, I probably should have taken a break. I probably should have taken a breather, maybe watch a show with my friends, and delayed the game by just 30 minutes to just breathe. Because in that moment, the dog knocked over the computer right at the beginning of the session. And in that moment, I wasn't feeling it. I was not feeling it. But it was an in-person game, and I felt like I was obligated to run the game. And I was, but I probably should have taken a breather first. That was probably a good idea that I did not do, but I should have. So yeah, it was just a bunch of mistakes that led to a session that wasn't horrible, but it did send me home feeling a little bit miffed, I felt not awesome. I didn't feel like that was a great session. I went home and thought to myself, that was our dud session. That was our dud session of the month. Let's get it out of the way. Every once in a while you run one that's not that good, and that was it. And I was okay with that. And that recovery mentality that I had, I don't think that's a bad one. If you run a session that isn't up to par, that's the truth. Sometimes you run games that aren't great, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It doesn't mean it's the end of your DMing career, certainly. Everyone, Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, me, you, everybody runs bad D&D games every once in a while, and that's okay. You pick yourself up, you move on. You run better D&D games in the future. You learn from the mistakes that you made. I made plenty of mistakes that session. I made plenty of mistakes throughout early sessions, but the good news is, after that game, I'm proud to say that for the most part, me and my party have been running straight amazing sessions. I can't think of a bad session for the life of me. I was going through my notes and thinking, wow, every game for the past year or so has been amazing. And considering we play every week, I think that's a damn cool achievement. I'm proud to say that this 70-plus session campaign has, for the most part, like I said earlier, truly been phenomenal. We're wrapping it up in 2 sessions. Session 71 is on June 9th, and then the week after that, I think that would be June 17th, is session 72, which will mark the end of Descent into the Veil. This 2-year journey that I've taken with my friends will be over. And honestly, I have no idea how I'm going to feel about that. We had a tear-jerker session. I think session 69 was the tear-jerker, which is hilarious. But session 69 was the final moment of peace, the calm before the storm session. I love doing these. Totally recommend it, by the way. I might do a whole podcast or video, Tabletop Tavern Tips, about this. Probably a podcast. I don't think this would draw a lot of Tabletop Tavern Tips viewers. But these calm before the storm sessions right before major final battles, we did that. And there were tears shed from multiple players. There was a lot of crying, dude. It was a lot of crying. And that felt... not gonna lie, this is gonna sound weird, but as a DM, that felt awesome. When my players are crying, that feels awesome because that means that they really care. That means they really, really care. It makes me want to cry, honestly. I get a little teared up. But yeah, I'm happy to report that for the most part, these games have been awesome. And overall, I'm not really too focused on the sessions that went badly. Sure, in the early game, I'm sure there was a few sessions that I'm forgetting about that weren't up to par. But for the most part, I don't even remember them. I just remember the good times. And that is something that I'm really happy about. But hey, there you go. There was one session that I distinctly remember not being that great. I hope you can learn some lessons from it. I hope that, this little section acts as encouragement. If a numbskull like me can make it to the end of a 2-year campaign, have an awesome experience with my friends, that means you can too. So if you're a DM out there, languishing without players or, in a hiatus because of scheduling, trust me. If I can do this, you can too. But in any case, a lot of players out there on the player end, they feel like, hey, I want the creme de la crop. I want the best that D&D has to offer. I want to experience a premium session, and I'm willing to pay a premium for it. And that brings us to paid Dungeons and Dragons. However, sometimes paid Dungeons and Dragons comes with a big caveat. Sometimes it sucks. And we're going to talk about that. Let's get started. Alright, so paid D&D has been on the mind of many. I've seen many sponsorships for Start Playing. Lots of people have been talking about paid D&D on Roll20. And as some of you know very well, we have covered many paid D&D horror stories. And those ones hurt a lot more because not only are you investing time and care into the game, now you're investing in the most important thing in your life, money. And that really sucks. When you lose money because of a D&D game, like that's just, that never feels good. When you spend on a DM, you're hoping for a premium experience. I mean, when you get into paid D&D, when you're a player, I can only imagine how frustrating it is to want something more out of this game. Like, that's why you're going to paid D&D. There are a lot of benefits to going with paid DMs. I mean, you're paying a premium, you expect to get a premium. Not only do you not get a premium, you get a horror story for your trouble. And that just, well, it really sucks. So today, we're going to be helping you guys to find dungeon masters that are worth your time and worth your money. And hell, helping those dungeon masters that are worth your time, that are worth your money, helping them to be found in the first place. So I've been looking through Roll20, I've been looking through Start Playing, I've been seeing paid posts and seeing which ones I think are good green flags and which ones I think are bad red flags. I'm not going to be like shouting out anyone in particular. That's not the style of this show. But we are going to be taking a look at some red flags to keep an eye out for. I know that for free games, these are going to be pretty innocuous. Like some of these are going to be like, oh, is that really that big of a deal? But keep in mind, these aren't free games. These are paid games. And in my opinion, when you are paying a premium, you should expect a little bit more out of it, right? So the number one thing that bothers me the most with paid LFG posts is ones that are way too vague. Like, if it just says, we're playing on the Sword Coast, level 5, meeting on Fridays, I have very little incentive to join that. Like, I imagine, and I imagine is not the right word. I'm glad, I should say, that it's short. I'm glad that it's not a extremely long post that I need to read through. But at the same time, like, I'd rather the post have a lot of content and a lot of explanation as to what the hell I'm getting into. I don't want a post that says payment is due at the beginning of the session if I don't even know what's going to be in the session. There's no session 0 scheduled. There's no information about the DM. I mean, there's a few fundamental things that I need to know immediately before a session 0 even starts. First and foremost, I need to know the style of DMing. DMs, you need to write down your style. It's just like a couple sentences, like what kind of games do you run? Do you like combat heavy? Do you like roleplay heavy? Are you pretty rigid with how you run the games? Do you like your style and you're looking for players that fit in that style? Or are you willing to be flexible and adapt to whatever style your players want? Do you like humor? Do you like serious? What kind of game are you running like in the first place? Like, and I don't mean like what kind in the sense of style. I mean what kind in the sense of the kind of game. Like that example I did earlier, oh, we're playing on the Sword Coast. Cool. What game are we playing? Are we playing D&D 5e, 3.5, Pathfinder? Are we doing Call of Cthulhu on the Sword Coast? I don't know. Those are the kind of questions you need to be answering. Also, on your end, what kind of players are you looking for? This kind of ties into the style thing, but some DMs want something specific out of their players, especially if, somebody left the game and you're looking for someone to fill in. Maybe a player who acted a lot in the support role left the game. And if the party really need that, maybe, you can make the game a little bit more flexible, but at the same time, hey, maybe put immediately like the specific kind of player you're looking for so the party aren't disappointed when somebody who doesn't fit into the game joins the game, right? Now, don't be too elaborate about this. You don't need to write a whole essay. You need people to read it. But I think that mostly comes down to formatting. Make it legible. But at the same time, make sure that the content is appropriate. Don't be vague. Number one rule, do not be vague. I also think it's good courtesy to put content warnings at the top. Like, what kind of content are you putting in this game? I think it's okay to have this in session 0 instead, but if that's going to be the case, you need to have a session 0. In fact, I think you need to have a session 0 every time. Red flag number 2, lack of a session 0. Putting all this information into the LFG is great, but further elaboration is required. Maybe the player has some questions. I think a session 0 over text can work. I've seen this before. I've heard of this before. I think this can work, but at the same time, unless it's a text-based game, I don't see why you would shirk the idea of a called session 0, like a voice call or a video call. Like, just do it. You have to talk to this person eventually, so DMs out there, bite the bullet and do the session 0 on a voice or video call. I think that's much more convenient. At least for me, I'd much rather take a phone call than do a whole session 0 through text. It's just so much more annoying, and I'd rather just do it on call. I have to talk to this player eventually. Might as well talk to them up front. I would also say, for group paid D&D games, try to get the group acquainted with each other quickly. Like, maybe not have a group session 0 for just the session 0. Like, some DMs like having one-on-one session 0s, such as myself. But if you're running a paid D&D game, I think it's a good idea to have a session 0 with the whole group. Doesn't need to be the only session 0, like I said earlier, but it does need to happen. I think it's good to get the group acquainted with each other immediately so that you can maybe make characters together and, this is the coolest part, establish relationships between the characters before the game even starts. That might be a great idea. Get players acquainted with each other. Remember, you aren't the only factor in making this paid game work. D&D is a collaborative experience. In order for this to work, everyone, players included, need to pitch in and make the dynamic function for the table. So, having an immediate session 0 where everyone can get to know each other at a baseline, good idea. Now, another thing I recommend, and something that I would words are hard. I would look out for is a lack of just small talk. I think that this might be a me thing, but a group that can't have small talk before the sessions or after the sessions, man, that group is going to have some trouble playing D&D. Like, if you can't even just handle just chewing the fat between sessions, I mean, I don't know how I'm going to roleplay with you. I am much more comfortable just having small talk than I am role-playing. And if small talk isn't working out, that's a red flag to me as a DM and as a player. Like, if I can't just talk to you about, like, hey, how was work today, man? Or, like, how was your day? Then I don't know how I'm going to pretend to be a fantasy character alongside you. Like, that's much more awkward, at least to me. So that's another red flag. That this is a really personal one, I'll admit. I'm not saying that everyone should be looking out for this. But for me, a big red flag is inability to have small talk. Like, it's just a signal. It's a signal. It's just a sign of group incompatibility. It doesn't mean the group is evil or bad. It just means, like, okay, I'm clearly not vibing with these people. We're not having any sort of conversation before the game. And if during the game my suspicions are confirmed and roleplay's really awkward and I'm not feeling the group dynamic, then okay, I might need to bow out. Again, that might seem innocuous. That might seem like nothing. But remember, we are paying a premium. You deserve a premium out of it, right? Especially since some of these games are charging like $20 per session. So damn it, I'm going to say that you need to treat yourself. If you can't have small talk with these people, I'm not saying you need to be best friends with them, but if you can't even have some menial small talk before the session, I think, maybe a hot take, I think that is a bit of a red flag when it comes to especially role-play heavy games. Now, next up, this is also more on the player end, the group end, than the DM end, but it's also on the DM end. Guys, scheduling. A lot of people go to paid D&D because when there's money on the line, groups will take it more seriously. But some people have way too much money and don't take it seriously anyway. And I've heard horror stories about this way too much, where people will be in a paid D&D game and too many people won't be showing up and games are getting canceled left, right, and center. Sometimes the DM's not showing up. Sometimes just too many players aren't showing up. That is bad. Holy hell. A lot of people go to paid D&D to avoid the rigors of bad scheduling. And if you have to deal with bad scheduling anyway, that's an immediate sign that you need to get the hell out of there. You need to take scheduling seriously yourself. But again, scheduling is not just something you as a player or even as a DM can control. Sometimes people just aren't showing up. Sometimes you just have a bunch of flaky players. And even though it's not the fault of the rest of the group, I think that's a sign that you either need to discuss with the DM getting rid of those players, or if it's just a huge overall group issue, you might need to just cut your losses, especially if this is showing up early on in the campaign. With paid D&D, I would take scheduling way, way, way more seriously. I mean, I take scheduling seriously when it comes to just free D&D with my friends. But I would take it even more seriously if it's strangers that I'm paying for. Like, if I'm paying money and you're not even showing up to the session that you're also paying money for, that just showcases a lack of care, a lack of respect for everyone involved. It's just bad news. And also, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it really annoys me. So it's gonna build up bitterness. It's just a recipe for disaster. I'm not saying bow out the moment any scheduling words are hard. Any scheduling problems arise. I'm not saying bow out immediately, but if it's a recurring issue, absolutely consider it. Like, after only 2 to 3 weeks, I would start worrying about scheduling issues and start considering my options, because that, my friends, is a bad, bad sign. On top of that, traditional red flags often apply here. I think traditional red flags are things that you need to look out for even more carefully. Traditional problem player behavior, overzealous edgelords, min-maxing to a degree that is problematic, especially stuff like incels or, God forbid, things like racism, right? Like, you don't want that in your games. And if it's a paid game, absolutely bow out. We just read about a game that was paid, that people were paying money for, and that was absolutely horrible, with a group dynamic filled with horrible problematic behavior that you just don't need to tolerate that, I don't want to tolerate that in my home games. I sure as hell wouldn't want to tolerate that if I'm paying money for the experience. Now, luckily, in my experience, to be fair, just browsing recently, I haven't had the need to pay for a game in recent years, but in my experience, browsing on Start Playing, where we got a recent horror story, this has not been a problem. The vast majority of games have been very, very open with the content of the games, with long descriptions detailing everything that you need to know. And that's great. That's awesome. Great stuff to see. On top of that, the Start Playing horror story that I'm going to be covering this week, the OP reached out and said that the Start Playing organization are looking into the situation and investigating into that DM. That's really cool. That's really good to see. So it's good to see those guys, from outside looking in perspective, seem to have their crap together. That's nice. But if you're looking through random paid games on Roll20, it's a bit more the Wild West out there. D&D Beyond, those kind of platforms, they're really big. And that means you're getting a lot of people, which in one sense is great, but in another sense, less great, because you're going to get more bad people. So I hope that this brief little section helped you to find some red flags, help you to realize some red flags and avoid some red flags if you're going to be looking for games as a player. If you're a DM, I hope this helped you to create a post that avoids these red flags, to attract the players that you want. Because remember, a lot of the problems with the post that I'm talking about, being vague, it doesn't help the DM either. If you're vague, you're going to attract players that might not fit your style, that might not fit the game that you want. And that is not good for you either. So I think it's good to be thorough, to be detailed in your initial post, to be thorough in session 0, and to make sure to establish expectations when it comes to your game, when it comes to scheduling, and when it comes to expectations for both yourself and for your player characters. I mean, seriously, this kind of thing helps nobody if you are lazy about it. Lazy DMing is never good DMing, even in free games, so it sure as hell is bad if you're words are hard. If your players, same thing, I guess, are paying for it. So yeah, there you go. If you want a little bit more reading on paid D&D games, I think Blaine Simple did a great little video about his experience running paid games. It was a horror story experience, unfortunately. So maybe we should get some positive experiences. If you guys have any positive experiences of paid games, leave them down in the comments. I don't have that much experience in this field. I've just been, outside looking in perspective, as I see it often. Blaine didn't have a great experience, so not exactly flying green flag. So if any of you guys have some good experiences in paid D&D, leave them down in the comments down below. Let's hear about some good stuff for once. But yeah, there you go. That's our brief section. I'm going to pop off to therapy, grocery shopping, lunch, and then I'm going to come back here hours later. We're going to do a big old time skip, and then we're going to do our homebrew section. We've got some backgrounds to talk about. Developed some new backgrounds, some early concepts for my race revamp. Very hyped for that. So yeah, let's talk about the Tavern Tales, Crispy's Tavern, D&D 5e rewrite thing. Without further ado, let's go! 6 hours later. I've been gone for a while, and when I got home, I was grocery shopping for like 3 hours. So when I got home, I just like collapsed on the couch, especially since it's like 98 degrees. So I had to carry all the groceries in, and I was like, I do not feel like recording. I just collapsed on the couch and then played some Destiny for a little bit. And now I'm finally back. I'm finally back to finish the taping of this episode. But yeah, it's time to talk about homebrew stuff. So last time we left off, if you guys are unaware, I am creating my own little fan-made rewrite of D&D 5e. My amount of homebrew rules has just exceeded the limits of what I can do with base 5th edition, and we're going to just be shifting up some features to fit into the sandbox of my own game. So we're starting with backgrounds, and the main design goal is optional complexity, but it's capable of simplicity as well. We want the option to be complex, but if you want it to be simple, you can do that too. You know, that is the goal. Baseline simplicity, optional complexity. Moving on. So the background system has been going really well. If you guys tuned in last time, you would know that basically what we've done is we've added a level 4, a level 8, and level 12 bonuses to all backgrounds to give them a little bit more of an identity and to encourage players to play as a criminal or as an acolyte. You know, an acolyte communes with fellow members of the church, gaining advantage on religion checks, for example. So if you do research, you are now incentivized to do it in a church, because if you're doing like religious or arcane research, you will gain advantage on checks and can expect hospitality, DM's discretion, if you are level 4 and you receive that bonus. In addition, at level 8, backgrounds can expect to get some kind of gameplay bonus that moves further than that. For example, thieves can gain advantage on pickpocket checks for items that they're aware of. They can roll history to discern the price of an item, a magical item or a valuable item they can see within 30 feet, and gain advantage on the pickpocketing check. Or, for example, cultists at that level can use their powers over dark magic to cast the Remove Curse ritual, which is a whole other set of homebrew rules that we'll go over when we get there. But the point is, that's what level 8 looks like, taking that fantasy, moving it to the next level, and then you get to level 12, and you gain a much more noticeable bonus. This is much more in line with what you'd see with something like a class, because at this point, you're level 12, you're getting up there. So, the sellsword background, the mercenaries, their whole fantasy is being able to stay in the fight even after their body has endured a lot of punishment. So, at level 12, you can gain an additional words are hard. You can gain an additional level of exhaustion without dying, because in my game, if you get 6 levels of exhaustion, you can no longer roll death saving throws. If you hit 0 hit points, you're dead. However, a sellsword, they can go to 7 levels of exhaustion without needing to worry about that. They also have lesser effects whenever they gain exhaustion levels, which can be really, really useful. Or another good one. Or the soldier background. When you're level 12, when you're fighting dazed enemies, they have a disadvantage against you and allies within 10 feet of you. So if you have other features that can daze combatants, that can be really, really useful as you act as a tank, giving enemies disadvantage when they are dazed, both for yourself and for your allies. Very, very useful. See, these are just minor additions and changes to the gameplay of classes, mostly passive ones, but the active ones encourage you to push into the fantasy of the class. For example, like it encourages criminals to actually be criminals, or acolytes to be acolytes. The 2 backgrounds I've developed since our last solo episode, since the last time we did with this segment, it was Entertainer and Scholar. I've done Entertainer and I've done Scholar. The Entertainer background, this is very basic. I was trying to stray away from this because I didn't want Entertainer as a background to just be Bard 0.5, but that's kind of what they ended up being. Entertainers also provide degrees of inspiration. Not like Bards, though. Entertainers, basically what they do is when other people in the party are rolling inspiration, the entertainer can enhance that inspiration. During downtime, entertainers can grant party members temporary hit points or a party member some temporary hit points with a little bit of a performance, stuff like that. You could also get certain bonuses if you perform in places of entertainment. This is a vague term that I use throughout a lot of the backgrounds. For entertainer, it's like a place of revelry, like a tavern or a carnival. For, an acolyte, it's a place of worship, like a temple or a shrine. For the scholar, it's a place of study. I provide examples, but I always put in parentheses DM's discretion, because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Like, you can't just put up a picture of your god and then say, this is a place of worship now. Could I get advantage on checks? That's not going to fly, right? So I do the same thing with the entertainer so that they can get the same kind of bonus to being an entertainer that I gave to acolytes or that I gave to criminal. Encouraging entertainers to actually perform and entertain and giving them mechanical and like actual physical effects for doing that, rewarding them for engaging with their background. And then, the mechanical effects beyond that, mostly just stuff that kind of lift from Bard. I tried to make it different by having it enhance inspiration rather than give inspiration, which means that it's actually really useful if you're an entertainer as a Bard, or if you're just an entertainer with another Bard in the party. That could be really nice, right? But there you go. That's the entertainer background. The scholar, on the other hand, the scholar is a background that focuses on discerning secrets of magic. So scholars are actually really good at finding magical hidden traps, which was not a fantasy I ended up fully diving into. I mostly just went with a similar fantasy to what the acolyte is, where in certain places you can gain advantage on checks so that, it encourages scholars to actually like go to a local mage's college to research there rather than just researching in their bedroom. I also changed out the feat that scholars get at level 1 in D&D, 1D&D base. Scholars get a magic initiate feat. I gave them Keen Mind instead. It fits with the fantasy that I'm going with. Also, scholar would share a feat with the cultist background, which I didn't think really fit. Like, I wanted the major backgrounds to have different feats. I'm okay with factions, which we'll get into a second. Factions, which are sub backgrounds. I'm okay with them sharing feats because there's so many of them. There's gonna be overlap. I'm not gonna create custom feats for every single faction. I mean, I've created custom feats for like half of them, but I'm not gonna create custom feats for the other half, But I wanted Scholar and Acolyte to have different level 1 feats, even though their fantasies are certainly different based on the level 4, level 8, level 12 bonuses. I just want that level 1 feat to be different. So Keen Mind is what we went with instead. I don't think Keen Mind is that bad. I've heard that some people get really, really annoyed with it, but like whenever I run with something with Keen Mind, it's never that big of a deal, especially since your character might have a Keen Mind, but your player might not. Like, the player behind the character might not take advantage of Keen Mind fully. So I don't think Keen Mind is too big of an issue to give someone immediately. I think it's an interesting quirk to give to a character. And honestly, in terms of all the feats that I have given out at level 1, Keen Mind is one of the more tame ones, I feel, because it's basically entirely roleplay based, which I think is interesting and cool. So it feeds into that fantasy of the Arcanist, or not the Arcanist, of the Scholar, much more than I think Magic Initiate, which is the feat that 1D&D gives them at base, which just gives them like a cantrip and a spell. Like, that makes sense, but it's the same thing that Cultists can do. Cultists also get a cantrip and spell from the same like area of magic, the Arcana class of spells. So I just think that that's really lame. But in any case, what I'm trying to get at is the Scholar I've tried to differentiate the Scholar from the Cultist that I wrote in a meaningful way. Cultists are all about debuffing others, whereas Scholars are all about finding hidden secrets about magic and using those hidden secrets to buff their party. So they can expend I believe they can expend a spell slot to give a nearby ally advantage on an attack, advantage on a spell attack at level 12. So it has to be a first level spell slot, so you can only do it like 5 times, I think, if you're like at that level. I don't think this is too OP. Like, you gotta expend a spell slot, you gotta use your reaction, there's a lot of hurdles you gotta jump, and at this point, you're level 12, and at this point, when you're level 12, I feel like players are just always hitting the monsters anyway. Like, there are very few times where my players miss attacks, and so this, I feel like, I might actually change this up just because, like I said, when you're level 12, you're very rarely missing the monsters. And also, like, when you're level 12, how many times are you making a spell attack? And also, like, a 30-foot radius is pretty good, but you gotta be, like, kind of nearby. So I'm still, like, working out the kinks on the Scholar. I'm liking the flavor of the first two, the level 4 and level 8 bonus. Level 4 one being, like, advantage when you're studying certain places, and level 8 being, like, giving you the dispel magic spell once per day and allowing you to roll advantage whenever you're trying to sense hidden magical traps or magical effects. I really, really like that. It also allows you to use your bonus action to sense hidden magical effects on an enemy in combat. I really like that idea as well because, again, even if you don't have Dispel Magic, you can get once per day for free anyway. So I like that fantasy, and I kind of want to lean more into that with the level 12 bonus, but right now the level 12 bonus is just giving advantage on attack to a nearby ally, and it's pretty restrictive. So, we'll workshop it, but that's what I've got for now. In terms of factions, if you're unaware, the faction system is basically sub-backgrounds. You keep the level 8, the level 4, and level 12 bonuses. I'm aware I said those in the wrong order. You keep those, but you trade out the ASIs, the tool proficiency, the feat, and the skill proficiencies. You trade those out. This allows you to have a more specific fantasy. So, for example, if you want to be a scholar, but you don't want intelligence and wisdom ASIs, you can pick a different faction, such as the Infinite Arcanum, which will give you intelligence and constitution. And rather than giving you the Keen Mind feat, it'll give you a feat that allows you to give potions to other people with a bonus action. Very, very useful. It also gives you alchemist supplies. That's the first time, by the way, that the tool proficiency is in any way roped into the class fantasy. I never, ever think of the tool proficiency in much ways when it comes to the class fantasy. Like, I'll think about it, but not that much. Here, it directly ties in, like alchemist supplies and flexible alchemy as a feat, which is a feat I made up, where you can give potions to other people as a bonus action. I mean, those directly synergize, and I like that. It's a completely different fantasy. And you still get those bonuses to finding hidden magics. Super, super cool, right? So yeah, I have developed some neat factions. I really like the entertainer factions. Those ones I kind of struggle with. One of them is a Bard's College, and the other one is this Feywild traveling carnival of shapeshifters. Both are really, really cool. Now, the only thing left to do is to develop one more scholar faction, because I've developed the Infinite Arcanum, this organization of magi and alchemists that work to enhance the soldiers of this grand empire. I developed them. Then I need to develop one more. It's probably going to be a magic school a la Hogwarts, probably based on a magic school from an arc in my second campaign, just to like tie into that a little bit. After that, I have one more background to create, the noble background, and you guys have given me some really cool ideas for how to create noble house factions, which was something I was pretty uncertain about, but I've got some cool ideas. And then backgrounds will be done. Now, the $1,000,000 question, will I release this? And I have made a tentative decision. I will release this. Probably. I will release the backgrounds as kind of like a tentative, let's see how people feel about this kind of thing. But just know that this is not something I'm doing professionally. I'm not selling this. I am just going to put it into GM Binder, make it look a little fancy, take an hour to make it look nice, and put it out there. People, please don't take it too seriously, all right? I'm not trying to be Matt Colville. I'm not putting out Flea Mortals here. This is just some petty homebrew. Just think about it as some random thing you found on Reddit, right? So what I'm trying to say is be nice, all right? I'm going to look over it with some people who I know are good into line editing. I'm good at copy editing, but I'm not that good at it, so I'm going to have some people help me out to make sure there's no typos. I'm going to look over it to make sure that like I'm happy with the quality before I release it. I'm not going to take it too seriously, all right? I don't want to turn this into a job, but, obviously when you put something out there, people can be, dicks, so there's not really much I can do about that. Once this is done and I see the reception, if people enjoy this, if people like legitimately think that this is interesting and neat, I'll continue doing it. I'll continue putting it out there. I mean, I'm going to continue this podcast segment because people seem to pull a lot out of this and pull some ideas out of this and like what we're discussing here. So I'm going to continue doing this as the end podcast segment whenever we're doing solo episodes. So, you'll keep on seeing this, but, the releases will depend on how this base release goes. You can expect to see it maybe like 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks from now is a good milestone. I'm aiming like June to get this done. After that, races. Races are next up on the chopping block. I'm going to be focusing on the races my players want to play as at base. So, yeah, there you go. Excuse me. Now, the main system that I've got in mind is this. Races in the Tavern Tales Crispy's Tavern Rewrite are going to have the following. They're going to have traits, a passive ability, and an active ability. That's the plan. So traits are going to be things that can be shared from multiple races. So, for example, multiple races can have dark vision. Multiple races can be strong and have 2 times carrying capacity. Stuff like that. That is something that is not going to be unique to one people. However, active and passive abilities, those will be 100% unique. Like Dragonborn, Dragonkin, those folk, they're going to be the only race in the game with Dragon's Breath. Like, no one else is going to get that. Orcs are going to be the only race with the Blood Fury when they go down at 0 hit points. Humans are going to be the only race with that kind of inspiration bonus. And then, depending on the power of the active ability, we'll tune the passive ability. So sometimes the passive ability is going to be really, really strong. Like, for example, just, thinking of Dungeons and Dragons, the base 5e game, gnomes? No, halflings. God, I am so bad at this sometimes. I haven't made characters in so long, but halflings have unbelievable luck. They can re-roll. They can re-roll ones. Unbelievable luck. That's a incredibly powerful passive bonus. Meaning their active bonus is going to be, a little bit more on the down low side. And orcs are going to be opposite. Like orcs being able to go into a major blood frenzy, get advantage on attacks, have one final stand before they hit 0 hit points, regaining hit points when they go down once per day. That's a pretty powerful ability. That's potent. So their passive is going to be a little bit more on the lighter end. You're going to see stuff like that. We're going to be trying to have passive and active bonuses interweave with each other and synergize up. Like humans are going to be based around inspiration in some way. Gnomes are going to be based around some form of tinkering. Von Wheel, my homebrew race, they're going to be based around looting your enemies and using their corpses to enhance your own visage. I like stuff like that. So that's the plan. At base, we're going to create an undead Sorrowsworn race for one of my player characters who's going to be playing a vampiric bard. That's what she wanted, so we have to create some kind of vampire undead-esque race. So Sorrowsworn it is. And then after that, probably going to do human because, just get it out of the way, just get it done. It's probably going to be easy. He says before putting, 3 hours of work into this. I think another player wants to play ASMR, so ASMR is also going to be on the block, which, by the way, ASMR is a race I always forget exists. I'm like WotC sometimes. I just forget ASMR are a thing. My bad, but, one of my players wants to play as one, so there you go. And then we'll see how the other players, what they want to play in the next campaign, and then I'll develop from there. I'm focusing around what they actually want to play as, because that's what's actually going to be used. And after that, I'll do the things that I'm excited for. So my Von Wheel homebrew race, those body modifiers and blood witches. I love that kind of thing. And then after that, the dinosaur people, the Sauralid. And then after that, I don't know, orcs probably. I love orcs. So we'll be probably doing a lot of monster folk, just because I'm really into that vibe. And then after that, weapon ability system. And then after that, we'll see. We'll see how this evolves. I'm having a lot of fun making this, and I hope you guys are having a lot of fun coming on this journey with me, and maybe even taking some inspiration from this. If you're excited, I guess, I don't know, should I build up hype or something? Are you guys excited to get the background revamp in your hands? Do you want this? It should be compatible with D&D 5e, by the way, as long as you take out the ASI bonuses and the skill proficiency bonuses. It should be compatible with 5e. You should be able to use it with 5th edition races if you just take those out. Just pop those out and boom, you should have compatibility. But yeah, there you go. That is the end of Crispy's homebrew segment. Let me know if you guys are excited to get these backgrounds in your hands. Give me a little bit of encouragement when I'm finishing up the dev cycle. And with that, I think it's time to end this segment and move on to Thing of the Week. Hit the thing. My thing of the week this week is the Longest Johns and the departure of Dave. So if you guys are unaware, the Longest Johns are a sea shanty group. I'm a big fan of them. I've shouted them out a couple times in my videos. If you watched when I was sponsored by Opera GX, you would have seen them pop up in my Opera browser a lot because I listen to their music constantly, and my Opera GX browser reflects that. But yeah, they recently did an announcement. They released an announcement saying that one of the main members of their quartet, Dave, is leaving the band. And this was a pretty sad moment. Like, he's been around for forever, and I've been listening to these guys, not like my entire life or anything. They haven't been playing my entire life. But I've been listening to them since they did Randy Dandio and Sea and Salt. So that would be like, I think that was a 2018 release. I might be wrong on that, but it's been a while. It's been like 4 or 5 years of listening to their sea shanties. And I'm a huge fan of their work. They are so good. And Dave himself is an excellent, not only vocalist, but he's also an excellent songwriter. He wrote Bones in the Ocean, which if you were into like TikTok sea shanties, which I wasn't, by the way, so I don't really know like what that environment was like. I only really got TikTok sea shanties sent to me by my friends because they were aware that I liked sea shanties already. But yeah, apparently Bones in the Ocean was very popular during that phase. So if you know that song, Dave was the one who not only sung the main chorus and the main lyrics, but he was also the one who wrote the song. And he did such an excellent job with that tune. He added a lot to the band, and it was sad to see him go, but at the same time, his departure stream was actually today as of recording this video. I'm recording this actually on the Tuesday, the day before this releases. His departure stream was today, and I tuned in during the break. I tuned in to sing along with the band and see all the chat like saluting him farewell, and that was pretty cool. So that's my thing of the week. Even though it's a little bit sad, I'm really grateful for all the amazing tunes and the awesome moments that Dave gave us alongside Longest Johns. I'm really excited for what the Longest Johns do in the future. They're a great sea shanty group, and they're going to be continuing. They just released a new album called Seasides, and it is excellent. It's got some great shanties in there. Some of them are re-releases of songs that I already love, which honestly I don't mind too much, like sticking those onto other platforms so people can listen to them beyond YouTube. I think it's really cool. So yeah, Longest Johns are my thing of the week. Love me a good sea shanty. And apparently, by the way, I remember when we were doing Opera GX, a lot of you guys love the Longest Johns too. So you know what? I think that means that we've got a good audience here. So hey, shout out if you love the Longest Johns. But in any case, if you guys enjoyed this episode of Tavern Adjacent, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out our Q and Play series, where we answer your questions about Dungeons and Dragons, about life, about whatever. New episode premiering next week. It's a lot of fun. And while you're there in the cards, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment, the worst of Crispy's sessions, to let me know you made it to the end of the video. And next, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.